The training compound hummed with tension. Rows of recruits were lined up for inspection, some too nervous to breathe, others too cocky to realize they weren't half as good as they thought. The air smelled of sweat, dust, and gun oil. But in the middle of them all stood her, a lean young woman in plain fatigues, eyes sharp, posture unshakable. To most, she looked like just another hopeful. But to General Marcus Harlan, a man who had spent 30 years leading men into battle, something about her didn't fit. He watched as the recruits stumbled through drills. They shouted commands, misstepped through formations, fumbled with disassembled rifles. And then, she moved. Not loudly, not showy, but with a precision that cut through the noise. She wasn't just trained. She was conditioned. Every gesture was efficient, economical, military. And then it happened. Two of the male recruits ahead of her were arguing about instructions. One raised his hand, fumbling a motion. The woman, without thinking, cut in, making a quick, sharp-hand signal to indicate silence and regroup. Harlan's blood ran cold. That signal wasn't in their training manuals. It wasn't part of any boot camp curriculum. That was a SEAL field signal, taught only to elite operators during covert mission rehearsals. He froze, eyes narrowing. The entire parade ground blurred around him as he focused on her. "Stop the drill," he backed, his voice slicing across the compound like a whip. The recruit snapped to attention, startled. The woman blinked, realizing too late what she had done. The general marched toward her, boots pounding, his weathered face unreadable. He stopped inches from her, his voice low and dangerous. "Only SEALs use that hand signal," he said, each word dripping with suspicion. The recruits around her shuffled nervously. Nobody breathed. And then, to everyone's shock, she looked him straight in the eye, and coolly replied with another SEAL hand signal, one that meant, challenge accepted. A ripple of whispers spread through the line. The general's face went rigid. For the first time in years, Marcus Harlan, the man who never flinched in front of presidents or enemies, stood frozen before a girl half his age. He whispered, almost to himself, "Who the hell are you?" The silence was deafening. But the woman didn't answer. She only stared back, calm, unshaken, like a soldier with nothing left to fear. And at that moment, every man and woman on that field realized something unthinkable. This wasn't just another recruit. This was someone dangerous, someone trained, someone hiding something big. That night, General Harlan sat alone in his office, replaying the scene in his mind. The way she had made the signal, not fumbling, not guessing, but instinctively, like a reflex burned into muscle memory. There was no mistaking it. But the problem was simple. There was no record of her. No SEAL training file. No Black Ops background. Her documents listed her as a volunteer assistant, here to support with logistics, not combat. And yet she had exposed herself in front of a dozen witnesses. The general lit a cigar, staring out the window into the desert night. He had seen spies before. Infiltrators. Pretenders. But this was different. There was something almost haunted about her. By morning, he made his decision. When the recruits assembled again, the woman found herself pulled aside. She was ordered to the obstacle course, alone. "So, isn't this for advanced candidates?" one instructor asked. Harlan's eyes never left her. "Consider this an assessment." The course wasn't meant for beginners. It was brutal, razor-wire crawls, mud pits, 20-foot walls, rope bridges swaying over ravines. And that was before the live-fire section. The recruits whispered from the sidelines, "Satan, she would break." She didn't. She moved through it like she'd been born there. Where others would hesitate, she committed. Where others wasted energy, she conserved. Every motion was precise. By the time she rolled out from under the wire, her uniform torn, her skin cut and bleeding, she wasn't gasping for air. She was calm, focused, alive. The instructors exchanged stunned looks. Even Harlan's stony face cracked with something he rarely allowed himself, surprise. But he wasn't satisfied. Not yet. At the end of the course stood the final test, the live-fire range. She was handed a standard-issue rifle, the kind given to trainees who'd never handled anything beyond basic drills. She checked it with a speed that made the watching SEAL veteran stiffen. Safety flicked, mag tapped, barrel angled. Without waiting, she stepped into position. The whistle blew. Gunfire roared from both sides as targets popped up unpredictably. Dust filled the air. Recruits watching covered their ears. But she was ice. Controlled bursts. Perfect form. Every target dropped in clean succession. Not one wasted bullet. When the final target fell, silence followed. The smoke cleared, and there she stood, breathing steady, rifle still raised, eyes scanning as if expecting the fight to continue. Then she lowered it. Slowly, deliberately. Harlan stepped forward, his voice gravelly. "You're not who your file says you are." The woman finally spoke, her voice steady, low, almost defiant. "My name is irrelevant, sir. What matters is this. I didn't come here to be a recruit. I came here because you'll need me." The general's jaw clenched. He had heard many bold statements in his career. But this wasn't arrogance. It was prophecy. And for the first time, he wondered, not if she was dangerous, but if she was the only thing standing between his men and disaster. The morning after her flawless performance on the obstacle course, the compound buzzed like a hornet's nest. Word of her skill had spread faster than wildfire. Men who had mocked her behind her back now whispered her name like it was a warning. She ignored the stares. She ate alone in the mess hall, eyes always drifting to the exits, as if her instincts refused to rest. But General Harlan was far from finished with her. He had summoned a group of SEAL veterans stationed at the base, men hardened by combat, scarred by years in places the government would never admit they'd been. When she entered the hangar, they were waiting. Big men with folded arms, quiet eyes, and the kind of presence that only came from killing up close. "This is her," one asked. His tone dripped with disbelief. "Claims she's no one," Harlan said evenly. "But she moves like someone who's seen more than she admits." The SEAL snorted. "Looks like a civvy to me. You want us to believe she's got what it takes. Let's find out." He tossed a pistol across the floor. It skidded to her boots. She didn't flinch. "Blindfold her," the man added. A cloth was tied around her eyes. The pistol's pieces clinked as they were dumped into a small box. The hangar grew silent. "Reassemble it." For a moment, she didn't move. The men smiked. To them, this was a humiliation ritual, a way to remind her of her place. But then her hands moved, steady, practiced, without hesitation. Springs clicked, the barrel slid, the magazine snapped in. Her fingers danced across the weapon like a pianist's across ivory. 30 seconds later, the pistol was in her grip. She racked the slide and raised it, aimed directly at the man who had mocked her. The room froze. "You're out of line," he growled, but his voice was tight, betraying his nerves. She pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. She had known it was unloaded, but she had made her point. The SEALs exchanged glances. For the first time, respect flickered in their hardened eyes. General Harlan stepped forward. His face was carved in stone, but inside, questions burned hotter than ever. "You've been trained by someone," he said. "Not just anyone. SEAL-level training. Maybe higher. Who taught you?" Her jaw tightened. For the first time, something like pain crossed her face. "My teacher is dead," she said quietly, "and he died keeping me alive." The men went silent. Combat men knew that tone. It wasn't bravado. It was grief forged into steel. Before Harlan could press further, an alarm cut through the hangar. Red lights flashed, sirens wailed. A distress call. Not a drill. The voice on the radio was ragged, panicked. "SEAL convoy ambushed, pinned down, heavy fire. We need extraction, immediate. Coordinates transmitting now." The hangar erupted into motion. The woman didn't wait for orders. She picked up a rifle from the rack, checked the chamber, and slung it over her shoulder. Harlan barked, "You're not cleared for deployment." She met his eyes, fists unshaken. "Then leave me, hey. But if you do, you'll lose men you can't replace." The SEALs hesitated. Their pride screamed against it, but in their gut, they knew. Moments later, the Black Hawk roared to life, blades slicing the desert air. The team piled in, armored, ready for war. And sitting among them, calm as stone, was the girl who wasn't supposed to exist. The Black Hawk skimmed low over the desert, the roar of its engines vibrating through the cabin. Inside, the SEALs sat tense, weapons ready. But all eyes kept flicking toward her. She sat with her rifle across her knees, head tilted slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. No fear. No hesitation. Just focus. The pilot's voice crackled over comms. 2 clicks out. Smoke visible. Hostiles still engaging. Through the open door, the team saw it. Smoke curling from burning vehicles, flashes of gunfire cutting through the dust. The ambushed convoy was pinned down in a ravine, trapped between rock outcrops where insurgents rained fire from above. Hot zone, the pilot warned. The Black Hawk hovered, rotors chopping sand into a blinding storm. The SEALs jumped, rolling into cover. The woman followed without waiting. Bullets cracked past them instantly. The air was chaos, men shouting, grenades thumping, machine guns tearing at rock and flesh. Harlan, who had insisted on coming, hit the date beside her. Stay behind cover, he barked. But she was already moving. Low, fast, like she'd done it 1,000 times. She slid into position near a burning Humvee, peeked through the smoke, and began calling out enemy positions with chilling precision. Sniper, East Ridge, 200 meters. Machine gun nest, left flank, 80 meters. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. And the worst part was, she was right. Every location she named lit up with muzzle flashes a heartbeat later. How the hell does she see that? One SEAL shouted over gunfire. Nobody had an answer. With her guidance, the SEALs shifted, their fire suddenly sharper, coordinated. Enemies began to fall. The tide turned, inch by bloody inch. But then came the real test. A rocket-propelled grenade streaked toward their position. The explosion ripped the ground, throwing men to the date. Dust blinded them. Ears rang. Through the haze, shapes emerged. 6 insurgents rushing down the slope, knives and rifles ready to finish the pinned soldiers. The SEALs were still stunned, ears ringing. She wasn't. She surged up, rifle barking in short, controlled bursts. One hostile dropped, then another. She pivoted, fired again, the rhythm unbroken. By the time the SEALs regained their senses, the attackers were sprawled in the date, lifeless. She stood there in the smoke, rifle smoking, her silhouette framed by flames and dust. General Harlan, still coughing from the blast, stared at her as if seeing a ghost. She glanced back at him, eyes fierce, voice steady. Say, I told you. You'd need me. The battle wasn't over. Enemy reinforcements were moving in. But now, for the first time, the SEALs didn't just fight beside her. They fought with her. And though none of them would admit it aloud, each man felt the same thing gnawing at his gut. Whoever she wasn't just trained. She was trained for war on a level even they weren't ready to understand. The firefight raged for what felt like hours, though the Black Hawk's clock showed only minutes. The SEALs moved like shadows, precise and lethal, but the enemy numbers were swelling. Every time they dropped one wave, another seemed to appear, pouring down from the ridgelines. Pinned against the burning convoy, survival looked thinner by the second. General Harlan slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle, teeth gritted. He had been in his share of wars, but even he could see this was spiraling toward disaster. That's when he saw her. Not crouched in cover, not panicked, but standing, moving through the smoke like it was her element. Her rifle cracked, each shot deliberate. One insurgent fell. Another ducked, only to be tagged before his head rose again. She wasn't just firing. She was tracking, reading the rhythm of battle the way others read a map. Who the hell is she? One SEAL muttered, or hidden under his rasping breath. Harlan didn't answer, because for the first time in decades of command, he didn't know. Then it happened. A scream. A SEAL went down, leg torn open by shrapnel. His brothers moved to drag him back, but heavy machine gun fire pinned them in place. Cover me, she shouted. They didn't move fast enough. She was already there. She slid across the sand, hooking her arm under the injured man. Bullets kicked dust inches from her boots, but she never slowed. With a grunt, she yanked him into cover, hands moving instantly to his wound. The SEAL she saved stared at her, pain etched deep but eyes wide. "Yo! Quiet," she snapped. "Save your breath." Her hands moved with the speed of someone who had patched wounds under worse conditions. She tightened a tourniquet, checked his pulse, shoved her own canteen against his lips. "Stay awake. That's an order." The SEALs glanced at each other. For a woman they'd mocked, dismissed, doubted, she gave commands like she had every right to. When she finished, she leaned the wounded man back, eyes sharp. Then she rose, grabbed her rifle, and without hesitation sprinted forward, straight into the storm. The ridge was a death trap. Dust and muzzle flashes revealed half a dozen dug-in fighters with clear sight lines on the convoy. They were the ones bleeding the SEALs dry. And she was climbing straight at them. "Is she insane?" Harlan growled, but even as he said it, his chest tightened. "No, not insane. Calculated." The SEALs laid down suppressive fire, buying her precious seconds. She darted between rocks, using the chaos to close the distance. Then silence. The gunfire above faltered. Muffled shouts rang out. Moments later, it was over, and she appeared at the ridge top, silhouetted against the burning sky. The machine gun lay twisted, its operator sprawled beside it. She raised her rifle in one hand and shouted down the slope. "Clay!" The battlefield shifted. With that gun silenced, the SEALs surged forward, cutting down the remaining fighters. Inch by bloody inch, they broke the ambush. When the dust settled, the ground was littered with bodies, burning metal, and silence. The surviving SEALs regrouped at the convoy. Their faces were caked in blood and soot, but their eyes were fixed on her. Not with contempt, not even with suspicion anymore. With respect and fear. Because now they knew, whoever she wasn't here by accident. Night fell heavy on the desert. The evac choppers finally arrived, lifting the wounded and the weary from the battlefield. In the dim light of the transport bay, the SEALs sat in silence. No joking, no banter, no boasts. Only the steady thrum of the rotors and the weight of unspoken questions. She sat apart, rifle propped beside her, staring into the dark. General Harlan couldn't take it anymore. He moved across the bay, boots echoing on the metal floor. "You saved lives today," he said. She didn't look up. "I didn't do it for you." His jaw tightened. "Then who?" Finally, she turned. Her eyes caught the faint light, and for the first time, he saw something raw there. Not pride, not defiance. Loss. "My father," she said softly. "He taught me everything. He died in a place like this, and the men with him didn't walk away." The silence between them grew heavy. "You're not listed in any database. Not military, not private. You shouldn't exist." Her lips curled in the faintest smile. "Maybe that's the point." Harlan studied her, weighing every word. He had seen soldiers break, seen warriors crumble. But this woman, she carried herself like someone forged in fire, and burned by it. Before he could push further, one of the SEALs slid beside them. "Sir," he said, eyes flicking toward her. "The men are talking. They want to know, is she one of us?" Harlan didn't answer, because he couldn't. The SEAL leaned closer, lowering his voice. "The way she moved, the way she fought, it's not just training. It's instinct. Muscle memory. Say, I've seen operators with less polish than that. And she's not just good, she's better." The SEAL glanced at her. If she's not military, then what the hell is she? The question hung in the air, and for the first time, General Harlan felt something he hadn't in decades. Doubt. The chopper landed back at base. Floodlights cut through the dark. Medics rushed forward, and the survivors stumbled out. She didn't wait for orders. She picked up her rifle, slung it across her shoulder, and started walking toward the shadows of the compound. "Where are you going?" Harlan demanded. She paused, glanced back once, then said, "Wherever you don't want me to." And with that, she disappeared into the night. The SEALs exchanged uneasy looks. General Harlan stood frozen, a truth gnawing at his gut. He hadn't discovered her. She had let herself be seen. The briefing room was silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. General Harlan stood at the front, a map spread across the table, but his eyes weren't on it. They were on her. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, face unreadable. She didn't belong in the room, yet no one had the nerve to ask her to leave. Not after the ambush. Not after what she had done. The SEALs shifted uneasily. Men who had laughed at her days earlier now avoided her gaze, as if staring too long might unravel a truth they weren't ready to know. Finally, one of them broke the silence. "Sir, we need answers." Harlan exhaled slowly. "You think I don't?" He turned back to her. "You fought like one of us. No hesitation. No fear. And then that ridge." He cut himself off, shaking his head. "I've seen SEALs freeze in situations less suicidal. But you didn't. You knew exactly what to do." Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp and unflinching. "You want the truth. You're not ready for it." The room stiffened. Soldiers weren't spoken to like that. Not by civilians. Not by anyone. But before Harlan could respond, one of the SEALs blurted out, "Then prove it. Show us you're not just pretending." She stared at him for a long, heavy moment. Then, without a word, she raised her hand. 2 fingers curved. Thumb tucked. A movement so small, so precise, most wouldn't have noticed. But every SEAL in the room went rigid. It was a hand signal. Their signal. One known only to operators who had bled, sweated, and nearly died in secret corners of the world. A gesture never taught outside their circle. The SEAL who had challenged her went pale. "That's impossible." General Harlan's chest tightened. He had been a commander long enough to know the weight of what he'd just seen. "Only SEALs use that hand signal," he said slowly. Then he froze. Because she wasn't done. Her fingers shifted. Another signal. Then another. A whole sequence, a chain of battlefield commands, fluid and perfect, delivered with the kind of speed only years of repetition could create. When she finished, the room was dead silent. Finally, she spoke. "You think I haven't earned the right to stand here. That's fine. But don't you ever question whether I fought?" She turned her gaze directly to the SEAL who had mocked her first, back at the range days earlier. "And don't you ever laugh at someone asking questions? Because sometimes the ones asking, they've already lived the answers." No one dared reply. But deep down, Harlan knew the truth. This wasn't just about signals, or training, or one firefight. This woman was carrying something darker, something unfinished, and it was about to pull them all in. 2 nights later, alarms ripped through the base. A convoy of Allied forces had gone dark in the mountains. No radio, no distress flare, just silence. The SEALs were wheels up within the hour. So was she. Nobody cleared her. Nobody invited her. But when the helicopter lifted off, there she was, sitting in the corner, helmet strapped on, eyes locked forward. No one argued. The mountain pass was a graveyard of burnt-out vehicles. The convoy had been ambushed, just like theirs. But this time, there were no survivors. Bodies lay strewn in the dirt, uniforms scorched, weapons useless at their sides. The SEALs fanned out, scanning the wreckage. General Harlan crouched beside a fallen soldier, jaw tight. They never had a chance. A whisper cut through the wind. "Not true," she said. Everyone turned. She was kneeling in the dirt, fingers brushing across footprints half buried in dust. Her eyes tracked the ground, the trees, the slope of the ridge. They fought hard. Long enough to send one runner. "Look." She pointed at a scuff mark leading away from the ambush. The SEALs followed her silently as she traced the faint trail into the mountains. Hours passed, moonlight cutting silver paths across jagged rocks. Then, at last, they found him, a soldier barely alive, hidden in a crevice, clutching a blood-soaked radio. His hand shook as he tried to lift it. "Trap, it's a trap." Before they could press him, gunfire erupted from above. An ambush, again. But this time, the SEALs weren't the targets. She was. The first shots weren't aimed at Harlan or his men. They were zeroed on her position, and she knew it. Without hesitation, she rolled into cover, rifle blazing. But her mind wasn't on herself. It was on the soldier, broken and bleeding beside her. She dragged him against the rocks, shielding him with her own body as bullets carved sparks into the stone around them. Why her? One SEAL barked, returning fire. Because they know who she is, Harlan growled, realization dawning too late. She wasn't random. She wasn't a bystander who stumbled into their world. She was the target. And now, by standing with her, they were two. The firefight tore through the mountainside. Explosions shook the ground. Shadows danced across the cliffs. And through it all, she fought like a woman possessed, not just to survive, but to end it. Finally, silence. Bodies littered the rocks. Smoke curled into the night sky. The surviving SEALs staggered to their feet, battered but alive. She lowered her rifle slowly, chest heaving, eyes scanning the carnage. General Harlan stepped forward, voice low but hard. "Who are you?" For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she pulled off her glove. On her wrist, half hidden by dirt and blood, was a tattoo. Small, faded, unmistakable. The insignia of a classified SEAL unit. One that officially didn't exist. She met Harlan's gaze, her voice steady. "You wanted the truth. Now you have it." And before anyone could speak again, she walked into the darkness, rifle on her shoulder, leaving behind more questions than answers. Because her story wasn't over. It had only just begun.